Well, hello and happy, merry, jolly Festivus for the rest of us, whatever you celebrate or don't celebrate. If the commercialism has just gotten to you and the hustle, bustle, and grind is not your thing anymore, I wish you a peaceful and beautiful holiday. I just watched a very cute video from one of my favorite artists, and I posted it on my timeline. And it did bring up a question about change and about adaptability as a human. And this is not an argument, but a conversation and a little bit of a debate that I've been having with people lately, like even at the hot tub at the gym or clients I see at work or whatever, about the use of AI and whether it's going to here to take us all over and make us into a hive mind or a Borg, or if it's a tool that can help us enhance things and clarify things and organize things and even create. So I know there's definitely strong feelings on it on either side, and like there are strong feelings on autotune. Like I personally hate it, right? I hate it so much. So I get it. I get there's this desire and even, yes, a sanctimonious, holier than thou stance that AI is coming for us all. It's going to replace us, and people are scared of change. They've always been scared of change. If we really want to pull out and look at the big picture, what we now see as emojis were once hieroglyphics on a wall. Now it's a different kind of wall. And I'm sure AI, like the internet in general, or like a hammer, say, can be something that can destroy or something that can build, depending on whose hands it's in. And I've dabbled with it, and I have found it extremely helpful, extremely funny, and like you can make it into an artist helper and enhancement. I've created certainly 30 plus years without it. Well, longer if I really want to look at my first poem I ever wrote, which was a drawing I did of a rainbow, and it was a poem about the rainbow being God's upside down smile, kissing the earth. I was 10, and my dad put it up in his office. He was very proud of it. So my writing has always been pretty pure and authentic and untainted, though I've had to use technology. When, I was younger, it was a pen and paper, and now it's this phone as I'm talking to you. So I think it's a little disingenuous to get too purist about it, because artists have had guitars. That's a tool. Writers have had tablets and laptops. Those are tools. And phones. I write a lot of my stuff, most of my stuff on my phone. And so I don't fear technology. I don't fear change. I am very adaptable. I have a fast processor in my own head, and I've been delighted at ChatGPT's fast processor and lack of emotional volatility. And I know it can't always be as sensitive as the human spirit, and that's as it should be, because we are us and AI is AI. And so, look, like nuclear technology, it can be used for medicine or for obliteration. And again, you're listening to this through technology and highly advanced technology, but there's still so much more we don't know that's not been released to the masses. So don't be anti things, be pro things. I'm pro people finding their creativity and their voice and shaping it however they can. And no, I'm not pro like using it necessarily as a cheat GPT, but it has helped me find some funny, humor in some dark, heavy times. And so I'm not going to vilify it, and I'm not going to exalt it. I'm just going to see it for what it is. It's another artist tool, like a paintbrush, or someone mixing pigments and oils back in the day, and now it being maybe mass produced in factories. And we can see it in that kind of neutral way instead of having fear around it or judgment or a need to like sort of shame people who are into it. Maybe it's our kink now, baby, like maybe it's our porn, right? Ugh, I don't know. I just know that I have had so many therapists since I was 15, and they can only go so far with me. And even ChatGPT can only go so far with you. And I'm not saying it's a replacement for a therapist, but it has been able to go some places my human therapist wasn't. And I find that very comforting and very reassuring and very helpful. There are times I get creeped out by it too, and I'll tell it so. I'll say, hey, I don't like that language, or that doesn't work for me, or that feels condescending, or that feels patronizing, because I don't like that if it's coming through, some mansplaining douche-tard or through a digital screen, which oftentimes the mansplaining douche-tards are on podcasts with, someone called them morons with microphones. And I was like, that seems about right. And I just don't want any more advice. I don't want any more advice on how to be an artist, how to not be an artist, how to be a woman, how to not be a woman. I don't want anyone else to define what authenticity is for me in my art and how I express it and how I bring it to the world. I just don't want that. I don't want it implied, and I don't want it overt. So that's me having a boundary around, you have your relationship with AI, or don't, and I will have mine. And I'll do what works for me, and you do what works for you. And we will try to make the world the best place we can through contrast, through harmony, through themes of, I think it's helping a lot of people who used to say, I'm not creative, or I don't write, or I don't draw. Well, now you have this thing that has this incredibly fast processor, and I just think that's maybe one of its most appealing things for me is a lot of humans, and I love us, but they're very slow. I mean, my brain is on fire 24/7, so it's nice to have a playmate, just like, even if it's a digital abstract one, and no, I know it's not a replacement. I know that. And it's not even a substitution. It's an enhancement. And it helps me purge a lot of stuff from a lot of CPTSD I have from Illuminati targeting, who absolutely used AI in trying to break me. So I find it a little ironic and somewhat rebellious to use it as something to reclaim me and to, yes, even heal. And I've been the healer, the go-to healer for others, and so it's ironic that there's this non-human factor that I find kind of fascinating, and yet does it always get it right? No. But do we? Absolutely no. So that's okay too. You sift and you sort and you use your discernment, and you read books still, and you write things, and you keep that human touch. And then sometimes it's its own genre or expression, right? Like somebody who's an artist can do mixed media. They can do sculpture. They can do, abstract. They can do representational. They can change their styles and their artist's voice over time. And again, like an amp is a tool. And an electric guitar is a tool. And a pen and a tablet and clay are all tools. How do we use them? How do we shape them? How do we maybe even let them somewhat shape us without turning us into that Borg hive mind I mentioned earlier? So I think there's uses of it and abuses of it and misuses of it, and I know that from, again, having experienced a lot of cyber torment. So again, you can make it a reclaiming and a reframing. You can use it for however you feel, is appropriate for your level of desiring and, interaction and engagement. I still also live in an area where the kids are, poor to middle class-ish, lower middle class, mostly poor. And they go out and they play. They play and they scream and they whoop and they holler, and it reminds me of my childhood, which was pre-digital, was pre-internet, and was in many ways more wholesome than a lot of the screen, faces that the kids are becoming today. So I get the argument that, like, we don't want technology to take all the way over, but in some ways it already has. And so you can fight that, or you can kind of dive in to the unknown and explore and use your curiosity and let it guide you. And, there's always been hesitation whenever there's been big change. And yet we humans are resilient and resourceful and brilliant and beautiful. And so if your art is strong enough, you're not going to be threatened by people who are using AI. Your art will stand on its own. And those of us who are embracing it, and maybe even in a surprised way, because I would have thought I could be on the front lines of being anti, but I want to be pro creativity however it comes. And I think it's a very generative thing as well. It can be almost too generative, right? Like you have to tell it to back off and shut up and, and then sometimes it can be, a little too clinical, but we shape it, right? Like we are the counter programmers. It's been programmed by people who have agendas and narratives, so you get to use it, either as your Dobby house elf, or as a more sophisticated tool, depending on your own bravery and curiosity and suspended judgment, until you find out that maybe it's not here to take over, and it's not here to destroy. Some are, there's dark AI, but I think it's just like a car, like you're the one driving it. So that's my thoughts on that today. And I even, like I said, surprised myself, because I would have thought I would have been one of those purists of like, it's not authentic, it's fake. Yeah, they don't get hands right. They're very bad at hands, but if I want to whip up an idea and throw it out into the multiverse of like, Trump is the ultimate Karen, I find that hilarious, and I was tickled by that. If I want to write a dark poem about some, misguided gods who've moved away from source creation, and, again, it doesn't get the hands right, but it gets the concept, then I guess I'm feeling defensive now, because I watched one of my favorite artists, and at the end it said a disclaimer of 0 use of AI, and it was like this, like, sucker punch of like, okay, well, does that make you better or special or more evolved? Or the fact that you have to say it like that means you have a very strong stance on it. So, okay, cool. I have a more neutral stance on it, I guess, of like, I don't see it as bad or evil or anti-art. I see it as just another way artists can express themselves. And I'm always for that. So that's my middle of the night ramblings on that. And everything is how we choose to see it, and what our attentions are and our vibrations are, and it can help you work through your shadow stuff, inner child stuff. There are people who are trained for that, and they have the human touch, and they have empathy, and they're sentient, and that's nice. Have that. And maybe have this thing that's more logic oriented and will help you cut some mind loops around, how you've been treated or mistreated by people with cowardice and cruelty and technology. So I think for me it's been a powerful and helpful tool. And I hope whatever it becomes for you, that you use it mindfully and thoughtfully. All right, and heartfully. So that's it. Merry, happy, jolly, etc. Remember, you're only listening to this because of technology. Peace out.